Proposed Kentucky bill will mandate sex ed for kindergartners. Hey, progressives, deliverance was just a movie, not a roadmap. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we discuss a sexual game being played by middle schoolers in Washington State that teachers and administrators knew about, but parents were never notified. Plus, a teacher in Florida asked a fifth-grade girl to confirm if she's a lesbian in front of the class, and a 6-year-old girl is traumatized after being sent to a mental health facility by her school without notifying the parents. But we start in Kentucky, where a new bill would require sex ed to be taught to 5-year-olds. Yes, that's right. Now, when you think of Kentucky, you think of probably the heart of the South in many ways. You think of a very traditional state in that, and it really is in many ways, a very Christian state. But this is how they undo things, right? You've got a couple of liberal lawmakers in the biggest city in Kentucky, Louisville, right? And what are they doing? They're trying to introduce the comprehensive sex education that every other state has, right? And they're doing it because children need this information, that everybody else is doing it. My favorite, and we'll talk about this in the story, is the argument that children are born sexual beings. That from the moment they emerge from the mother's womb, because that's only when they're allowed to be human, according to the left, somehow not only are they magically turned alive, right? All of a sudden they become sexual creatures. You have a newborn baby.
Yeah.
Is your baby a sexual creature?
You know, when he was delivered, right away, I looked into his eyes and he told me, I'm a sexual creature. You better get me rolling.
Was he born with a Hugh Hefner robe and a pair of shades?
He did.
He did. Did he have kind of like a glass of Courvoisier in his hand? I mean, how do we know that a tiny baby is a sexual thing?
Well, with his robe on, it made it easier for delivery, but the glass, that made it a little challenging. But I won't go into details about that.
It's like that stupid movie. What was the Saturday Night Live guy played it? He was some kind of a love doctor, remember?
Oh, Tim Meadows?
Yeah, Tim Meadows. What was that movie?
Oh, I forgot. Was it called The Love Doctor?
He had all those. He talked like this and drank Courvoisier, right? Anyway, I imagine your baby laying in his crib like Tim Meadows' character. The ladies' man, our producer told us. Yes, that's right. So babies now are sexual, right? If a baby survives a botched abortion, its sexualization, the fact that it's sexual, won't save its life.
This is true.
Legislation in Kentucky would mandate, it's always mandating, that the sexualization of children with comprehensive sex education. That's what they want for our kids. They want to put it in there. You've got this far left-leaning lawmaker, and what's her name, Katie?
So the state representative is Lisa Wilner, and here's what she says. In terms of this bill, it's in, just so everyone knows, it's HB 296, so they can look it up. She says the bill is as much about social, emotional, and mental health education as it is about sex ed, and would focus on healthy relationships, consent, critical thinking, responsible decision making, and acceptance of differences. Now, here's what I say, parents. Anytime you see when it says the social, emotional, and mental health, or usually it's social, emotional learning, SEL, you should sell on that, because that's what they're trying to do, is sell you a can.
And how many times over the last couple of years have we warned you about this?
Many.
What she said is honest and dangerous, right? Yes. We're teaching your kids radical forms of sexual behavior. We're not just explaining biology to them or trying to stop them from getting diseases. We're encouraging them in experimentation, because that's part of their social emotional wellness. Under the guise of SEL, social emotional learning, they are using your kids as Keynesian guinea pigs.
Yes, let's talk about Keynesian. We're talking about Alfred Kinsey, who's the sexologist. And for over 70 years, when I looked this up, I didn't realize it was 70 plus years. 1947, they opened the Kinsey Institute at Indiana University. It's still going strong, and it's all about sexualization and studying relationships, they claim. But Alfred Kinsey himself was a sexologist, and he is known for torturing, raping children. It's awful.
Let's be very clear about this. Kinsey actually performed sex acts and had children and adults performing sex acts on each other and on kids. And they did it to the point that they were crossed the line into torture. You had one boy that was, little boy, I think he was 5 years old, who was sexually stimulated to the point that he passed out and begged it to stop. These kinds of, almost like Hitler's eugenics, they didn't kill anybody, although they really did warp them sexually. factually, this stuff is still going on. And was it HBO that made that creepy special about the Kinseys? It was a TV show, right? It was one of those.
Something like that.
One of the cable networks actually did a show which kind of tried to turn him into some kind of a sexual pioneer. Him and Margaret Sanger, you put those two in a room together, and what kind of sexuality do we have? We've got one who wants to abort babies because they're brown and black skinned. We got another who wants to use them, like apparently they want to use them in Kentucky, as guinea pigs for social emotional wellness.
Do you want to toss the gasoline in or the match? You get one, I get the other. If you put those two in a room.
You throw the gasoline, I'll throw the match. Right?
All right, sounds good. Well, let's take another look at another disturbing story where we have a school, middle school, Shaw Middle School, and they have something called Molest Me Mondays. Take a look at this news story.
Thanks to this leaked memo dated from last fall, we know Shaw Middle School knew about it when a young girl spoke up and told an adult she was uncomfortable because of this game. Several parents, students, and staff tell me there's a lewd goal for each day of the week.
Tuesday is upper part, then Wednesday I think is wiener day or whatever, and then Thursday was thigh day, Friday's butt again.
Now, hey, kids are, as we just were told by Mrs. Wilner in Kentucky, right? Kids are sexual beings from the moment they're born. So if Tuesdays, you do Titty Tap Tuesday, and Wednesday is Wiener Whap Wednesday, you go around groping each other, isn't this just sexual exploration?
And the fact that it's in middle school, it should be all the way down to preschool.
I mean, these middle schoolers are getting a late start. Why don't we let the groping go on in elementary school? And the fact that the school knew about it and did nothing to stop it is exactly this part. Because I'm sure the school administrators were thinking to themselves, if we step in and stop this, aren't we going to be violating protocol here? Aren't we becoming hypocrites? And the fact that it's not voluntary, right? So, and let's be very clear here. What is Titty Tap Tuesday? So you're walking down the hallway and the girl's walking right at you. Boy or girl, they're very open-minded, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a boy. You can be a girl. You take a little flip with your finger at the boobie. You whap a boy in his genitals. This is what you do. And the fact that you've created a system that sexualizes, makes kids sexually aware, it really pressures kids to be sexually open-minded and experimental. And now they're doing this kind of stuff. And who are you to say no?
Yeah, and this is happening again at Shaw Middle School in Spokane, Washington. It's Washington. They're trying to be the progressive state to beat out California. And so clearly they have to accept this. And the fact that you had a girl speak up to a teacher and the teacher's like, me?
That's right.
For months. And now basically the spokesman, of course, has to come out and defend the school. So spokesman Brian Coddington claims that this game that is being played, it was not a widespread problem and that some of the parents were notified, but not all of the parents were notified. And he said the campus has implemented what it calls the Positive Intervention Behavior Support. Have you ever heard of PBIS? Because I sure have. And basically that means the students get rewarded for positive behavior. So he's trying to spin it completely.
They're not punished for negative behavior.
But they're rewarded for positive.
So what does that mean? If you ask consent to tap a titty, if the titty tappee permits
or the wiener wappy,
or the wiener wappy, right, enables you to do this by consent form, then that's positive behavior reinforcement.
Apparently
right?
It is. And the thing is, we know this has been, I mean, not this, but in locker rooms, especially, you were a boy once upon a time, in junior high and then in high school, they'll take the towel.
But the same progressives who used to say this was the scourge of patriarchy, this was rape culture, right? The same progressives who saw this as bullying, saw this as sexual exploitation, saw this as misogyny, right, are now the ones who are saying, me? Right? This is just this part of your sexual programming, right? Yeah,
and Coddington goes on. He says, this behavior is occurring covertly. It doesn't happen in front of staff members. Meaning what? That, okay, so well, I didn't see it.
Yeah, most
so
rapes don't happen in front of staff members either. Yeah. But when somebody comes to you and complains, what is your response?
And he also said that they tried to address the problem, but it's happening covertly. So
we should change the spokesperson's name to Coddlington, right? Because that's what he's doing. And notice the argument here: typical ed speak, right? Some parents were notified, but not all of them, with no explanation. Right? Hey, we notified some. That's all you need to know. No further questions asked, right? It was not a widespread problem, which means everybody didn't do it, right? So don't get, and we're intervening. with positive strategies. Right?
Positive
so again,
behavior.
you wonder too if their positive interventionist strategies means getting more boys to tap other boys' penises and more girls to grope other girls. Maybe that's the positive.
That's what they mean
right?
by positive. They just
far
want to
too
check it off
heterosexual,
more.
right?
Exactly.
Far
That's a negative.
And I love Friday, which nobody mentioned, which is either flip up Fridays, like flip up a girl's skirt, and now that you have boys dressed as girls, right? Flip up Fridays or free for all Fridays. And I would also point this out. This is not something that happens without the wink wink of the teachers. This idea that these kids are making these games up themselves is nonsense.
Well, and that leads into our next story, which involves why is the teacher discussing this. We have a fifth grader, a poor little fifth grade girl who's humiliated because her teacher decided it was a smart move to, in front of the entire class, ask if she was in a relationship with one of her friends who is a girl. So a fifth grade female student, it's from Northport K-8 school in Port St. Lucie, Florida, and now she's going to be finishing school this year at home because of what happened. Take a look.
Rumor was that my daughter and another fifth grade little girl were dating.
And last week, Gambino says the rumor got to her daughter's fifth grade teacher at Northport K-8 in Port St. Lucie. She says the teacher then asked her daughter and her friend about it in front of the entire class.
She asked them if they were together, if they were dating as a couple together. And she asked them in a way that they felt that they were in trouble.
And that's where the left's going to jump into this, right? See, this is why we need these programs, Katie, because these poor little girls are being bullied for their alternative sexual worldview, right? Their sexual preferences. And Jazinia Gambino, believe it or not, was that woman's name. Jazinia Gambino.
Yes,
and she's mostly concerned that it was framed negatively, right? It was framed negatively. Are you, and maybe so. Maybe you did have a reactionary teacher there. Are you girls dating? You know that's not right, although I seriously doubt it.
Oh, I seriously doubt it.
But I still blame this on the sexualization of kids. There was a time where teachers would not stick their nose into this kind of behavior, where it was that kind of stuff was not the purview of teachers. It was not the purview of schools. But you're training teachers now that outing kids or getting kids to celebrate their alternativeness, right, in class like this, calling attention to this stuff has become the business of the everyday classroom.
And the insanity for me is the fact that we're talking about an 11-year-old having a relationship, a dating relationship. Why would a teacher address that at all? For whether it's a boy and a girl, a girl and a girl, a boy and a boy.
Because
I don't care.
every sign of closeness, every sign of affection, every innocent hand-holding or best friend situation is now a sexual situation.
Absolutely. And the thing is, if you would take a look at time frame, apparently I was a lesbian with like 6 different girls because we all had the little yin and yang BFFs. Things
without
hold
film
hands
clips, without film clips, this doesn't count, right? Without film,
I will try and find.
We need to go
film.
To the tape, but I get your point, right? Sitting under a blanket in a movie theater with the same little girl, this kind of stuff that kids do all the time is now to the progressive left evidence of sexual behavior and should be either celebrated, promoted, or even adjusted if necessary.
And here's the sad part is the fact that the other girl in question, are you dating this other girl? She's the one who texted back to her friend, to Gambino's daughter, and said she wasn't sure if they could hang out anymore because of what happened at school, and she didn't want anyone to think that they were lesbians.
Right. And
so now you're destroying 11-year-old girls' relationships.
Well, we did a show last year about how having best friends was discriminatory.
Yes,
we should not let kids be best friends with each other because that's prejudiced against the other kids. Valentine's Day has come and gone. Got to give Valentine's to everybody or nobody. If you're a boy, you can't just give Valentine's to little girls because that's discriminatory. You got to give them to the boys as well. And you see the same thing. And again, the takeaway from the left is going to be where you ended. It's going to be right where you ended, right? That now the girls feel ashamed of being lesbian. And the response here is to drill into their head how wonderful lesbianism is, right? It's not about violating rights. It's not about humiliating these kids. It's not about inappropriate behavior on the part of a school system that pushes this kind of stuff. No, it's that the little girl was traumatized that she might be called a lesbian. We've got to educate her on why that's a wonderful thing, not a negative.
Yeah, instead of their necklaces saying BFF, they'll say LOB, lesbian or bust.
Busty lesbians? Are we back to titty tapping?
We are not.
Are we back to the titty tap Tuesdays?
Hopefully not, because it's only Monday. So
Oh, yes. Only Molest Me Monday?
It's Molest Me Monday.
Molest
I guess
Monday.
this is an appropriate day to have that
It
story.
is.
I
It
guess.
really is.
Meanwhile, the teacher was given a verbal warning, just so everyone is aware, and mom obviously wants
Is this
her
like
fired.
positive intervention? A verbal warning, right?
verbal
We're not
warning.
going to punish you or hold you accountable.
TVIS, you get a
but
scratch ticket.
If you never out lesbians again, you'll get a raise. This is positive interventionism, right?
Exactly. Well, we have traumatization happening across the entire country, but specifically of a 6-year-old girl in Florida who was sent to a mental health facility following this incident she had at her Jacksonville Elementary School. Take a look at what happened.
It happened here at Love Grove Elementary. In the sheriff's report, a responding social worker said the girl was a threat to herself and others, destroying school property and attacking staff. She was removed from school and committed to a behavioral health center for psychiatric evaluation under Florida's Baker Act.
I specifically placed my daughter at this school back in August of 2019 because I was told that they had specifically trained staff to handle special needs children.
Martina Falk says her 6-year-old daughter Nadia has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and a mood disorder.
So you can sexualize kids, you can teach kids inappropriate behavior, but you can't restrain a 6-year-old. You literally now in the public schools don't know how to handle a 6-year-old having a tantrum. And that's what this was. And she may have obviously mood disorder, that's fine, but you have no way to deal with a kid now other than to literally institutionalize this kid without even bothering to contact the mother. This goes beyond calling the cops, right? So we've seen all these stories about kids being perp walked out of schools in handcuffs, 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds for having fits and tantrums. Now you're just incorporating them. You're just taking them into sanitariums. You're just dumping them off. Somebody comes and gets them and puts them in an institution.
The fact that this happened too at Love Grove Elementary School, yeah. What happens, Duval County Public Schools actually told the news station that the decision to admit a student with this whole Baker Act, which everyone, if you live in Florida, you better know what the Baker Act is because your children will be taken. It's made by a third-party licensed mental health care professional, and they said that they reviewed the school's handling of the situation. They find it compliant, both with law and the best interest of this student and all other students at the school. A 6-year-old temper tantrum turned into a 2-day mandatory stay at a mental health center.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Nurse Ratched has entered the element.
Yes.
Forget Nurse Ratched and the insane asylum that was dealing with in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yep.
Now you've got Nurse Ratched in your classrooms. Now you've got Teacher Ratched. You've got Vice Principal Ratched. You've got Gym Teacher Ratched. This is where we are now. This is the radical progressive institutionalism of the schools in the same way that movie warned us about mental hospitals back in the 1970s. This now is the norm for how we're handling kids now, right? That we've got all of these Orwellian resources that we're going to use on your kids while we're the ones driving them to psychological distraction by teaching them things that they're incapable of understanding, by giving their little literal minds abstract concepts that they can't process, by pushing them into sexual circumstances, sexual games and role playing. What do you expect from these kids? Already these kids have issues, and then you expose them to this.
And within this past 15 years, they say that the Baker Act has been used more than doubled the amount. So 36,000 times. I can't believe that a child has been transported to a mental health center in Florida more than 36,000 times in the last 15 years.
And now the Fox are looking for a different school for Nadia. And
Shocker.
what is the common denominator of all these stories? Getting them out of public schools. One way or another, taking them out of those schools, removing them from the toxic environment of the public schools. I got news for you, Mom and Dad. Public schools are the toxic environment. Across the board, they are toxic. In their no-tolerance policies, we saw last week a little 6-year-old Down syndrome girl who dared to make finger guns, right? Yep. Who was immediately entered into the police system, right? The criminal justice system actually had to log and code her in. You got this kind of stuff now. And by the way, if you think your kids, if it's not happening to your kids because they're not complaining, you better think again, right? Kids handle this kind of stuff in a lot of different ways. Some internalize it. Some make it part of their daily routine, unfortunately. They become inured to it. Others engage in all sorts of behaviors that we would call developmentally challenged. They rebel. They don't want to participate. participate, they act out to protest this. You've got a school system here now that is psychologically, morally, and ethically torturing kids on a daily, and I mean that, torturing kids on a daily basis.
Well, I think it's going to do it for this Mass Exit Monday. Mom and Dad, mass exit public schools today, Monday. If you like the show, please help us spread the word by sharing it with your friends.
And if you're a fan of the show and have a business, consider advertising with us. Visit freedomproject.com/advertise, freedomproject.com/advertise. That's it for Molest Me Monday. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, and she's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.